Hi everyone, so yesterday you learned how to go from a decimal to a fraction or a fraction to a decimal, and today we're going to throw percentages into that mix. So go ahead and find your notebook and find a blank page and title it percentages. Alright, so we're going to start by making 4 columns. We're going to have the percent. We're going to draw a model. We're going to write a fraction. And finally, a decimal. Alright, so we're going to start with the maximum percent. So if you give everything you have, people say you gave 100% because it is the total, 100%. Alright, so the models we're going to draw are going to be a 100 square grid. So what you need to do is draw a square. Doesn't have to be perfect. And then draw 9 vertical lines and 9 horizontal lines inside. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect, just like something like that. Okay, so if we were going to model 100%, I already said this is the maximum you can give. There's 100 little squares in here now. How many do you think we would shade in to show 100%? To get 100% on a test or a homework assignment, you got a perfect score, you got everything right. So 100% would be all of this shaded in. The whole thing filled up. 100 of the squares. Alright? Now that we have our model, the fraction is pretty easy. Because we know there's 100 squares here. And how many of the 100 are filled in, are shaded? 100. So our fraction then would be 100 of the 100 squares are shaded. 100 out of 100. Now if we put that in simplest form, it would be 1 whole. Right? 100 divided by 100 equals 1. Alright? And that makes our decimal easy. It's also just 1. If you want to put a decimal in there, you can put 1.0. 1 whole. Alright? So you're gonna be given either a percent, a fraction, or a decimal, and you're gonna have to fill in the other 3 columns based on what you get. So we'll start with another percent. Let's think about 20. Oh, let's think about 50%. 50%. Okay. We draw a model of that. We'll get 100 squares in there. How many of the 100 do you think we fill up? 100 is maximum. We are given 50% right now. It would be 50. So there's 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. We model that by filling in 50 of the 100. Which makes our fraction easy. We just said it. 50 of the 100 would be 50 out of 100. You'll notice percents are always out of 100. So whatever the percentage is, that's the numerator. And then 100 is going to be your denominator. So it's 100%, it's 100 out of 100. It's 50%, it's 50 out of 100. This 100 is your maximum. And this is 50%. Which we know simplifies. If we divide both of these by 50, you get a half. 50 divided by 50 is 1, and 100 divided by 50 will be 2. Or you'll notice that 50 is half of 100, so it's half. All right, let's think about our decimal. It actually might be easier to go to the decimal from this fraction. We learned how to do that yesterday. So if it has the denominator of 100, we know that just means we need 50 hundredths. 50 hundredths would look like this. Or you can take that 0 off and just make it like this. Those are equal to each other. Either one is 50%. All right. What if I was going to give you the decimal? What if I give you 0.75? That decimal. So you're going to work to try to fill in these other spaces. What's the fraction? What would the model look like? What would the percentage be if I give you 0.75? Well, if we read this decimal correctly, then we're going to read this number and then say what place this 5 is in. So that would be 75 hundredths. So 75 hundredths, the decimal would be what fraction? So it would be 75 hundredths. Just like going from here to here, going backwards from there to there. 75 hundredths. Okay, in simplest form, we would divide by 25. And that would give us 3/4. Think about quarters. 75 cents is 3/4, 3 out of 4. All right. So now we're going to go to, we can go to either one really, but let's do the model next. We have a 100 square model. How many would we fill in of our 100 squares? Well, we'd look to our fraction for that. 75 out of 100. So there's a couple different ways to fill it in. You can do 7 rows and then 5 more. Or if you do a 5 by 5 square, that's 25. So you could, that would make it 50, and then you could do another 5 by 5 square, and then you have 75 out of 100 filled in, which we can see the way we colored it in, that is 3 of 4 total pieces, which makes sense with this fraction, 3/4. All right, so if we have 75 hundredths as our fraction, what would our percentage be? It would be, percentages are always out of 100, so it would be 75%, just the numerator. If our fraction has a denominator of 100, the percentage is just the numerator. So it's 75%. All right, I'll do one more. What if I give you the fraction? What if I give you the fraction 2/10? Now, remember, well, we can go to a decimal pretty easily with 2/10 because we learned that yesterday. So we can go ahead and do a decimal. 2/10 would be a 2 in the tenths place, or 2/10, 0.2. But it might not make the model out of 100. If we're doing a 100 grid model, it might not make doing that super easy if our fraction has a denominator of 10. So what should we make our fraction have a denominator of if we're going to use a model that has 100 squares? Hopefully you thought of 100, right? All of these have a denominator of 100, and lets us look at this model easily, and lets us go to a percent easily. So let's make our fraction have a denominator of 100. So So how do we do that? We want it to have a denominator of 100. We would have to multiply our 10 by 10. Multiply our 10 by 10, we got to multiply the 2 by 10, which gives us 20. So now we know how many of our 100 to fill in, and we know the percentage, because when our fraction has a denominator of 100, the numerator is the percent. So that makes our percent 20%, 20 out of 100. It makes our model have 20 little squares filled in. 20 out of 100. Okay, so this is what you're going to be doing today. You're going to be changing fractions to percents, decimals to fractions and percents, given a percentage and tell me what fraction of a whole and what decimal that percentage represents.